Hello, happy Saturday again. Today I want to talk to you about bats. You'll see why in a minute. So, working as a youth pastor, I'm often rudely reminded of how difficult it is to be 14 years old. It certainly was for me. In fact, the most overpowering memory I have of being that age is sheer and utter boredom and inexplicable anger. I can hardly even imagine what my kiddos are going through in quarantine, except that I kind of can. Because when I was 14, before I became a cool kid, yes, believe it or not, I was actually pretty popular in high school, but more on that later. I became an expert in self isolation. I was fed up with everything. My parents sucked, my sisters sucked, my stupid school sucked. Everything sucked so much that I decided I needed to be as far away from my family as humanly possible while still being forced to live under their roof. Well, lucky for me, we had a large furnished attic that was really only used when extended family came to visit, which wasn't very often. The attic situation in my childhood home was pretty sweet. It was this big long room with sloped ceilings flanked by storage closets full of stuff that no one in the family had been brave enough to touch for fear that it might somehow multiply and suffocate us all. When my sister and I were kids, we loved snooping around these closets because what better place to spend hours exploring than in insufferably dusty closets full of dead moths and hideously out-of-style coats. These closets were also especially ideal for our favorite play pretend game, Hiding from the Nazis, which was of course inspired by our perverse obsession with Anne Frank and Number the Stars and all the cheery stories that normal 8-year-olds love. What was extra special about the attic closets, however, is that they were all connected, and you could move around the whole room through the walls like a Neil Gaiman character and hide for hours on end, sometimes scaring the crap out of our parents. Anyway, this isn't a story about how much I love closets. Believe me, I busted out of my proverbial one as fast as I could. So, here we have 14-year-old Allison, angsty as all the fury of hell, holed up in her attic bedroom suite, writing depressing screenplays on a Corona typewriter I found in one of those many closets, blasting old records, making moody mixtapes on the partially broken hi-fi system, tacking Lord of the Rings posters on every spare wall space, and playing guitar really, really loudly and really, really poorly. You get the idea. Well, during one of my many reclusive, days-long mope sessions, clanging away on the sticky typewriter, probably silently crying about some unrequited crush, I heard a strange rustling from one of the closets. Being no stranger to the various wild animals that seem to prefer our yard, deck, chimney, garage, garbage cans, etc. for shelter, I froze. If it's another raccoon, I thought to myself, I swear. And yes, I said another raccoon. You would not believe the encounters my family had with raccoons, both alive and dead. But it didn't sound like a raccoon. Raccoons are pretty loud and pretty big and not very graceful. This was a quick, quiet scampering sound. No, I thought, it must be a squirrel. It must be squirrels running around on the roof. I ended up ignoring it for the most part, and every time I heard that little skittering sound, I chalked it up to squirrels. Now, fast forward a couple years. I'm considerably less angsty, still angsty though, and becoming what could be considered edgy cool, as I hinted at before. Instead of Lord of the Rings posters, collages of my favorite footballers, it was a World Cup year, album covers, and photos of Scarlett Johansson, my future wife, now adorn the walls. The anarchist's cookbook, Steele's book, and the Communist Manifesto replaced sci-fi and fantasy novels on the shelves. The attic had become less of a hermit cave and more of a party destination, if you can call having a few friends over to listen to records and play cards while sneaking small amounts of booze a party. I sometimes still heard the squirrels bustling about, but I was used to it, and it didn't really bother me. Then one day, after a massive blowout fight with my mom, probably about having people over in the attic too much, she was still mad about the time she and my dad went away for a weekend and came back to me with bright red hair from a bleach job gone wrong. Or not doing my homework, or not wanting to study for SATs, or any of the things mothers and daughters fight about. It doesn't matter. It's not the point of the story. The point is, I was so upset that I threw a broken hairbrush at the attic wall, just chucked it. The attic wall was 100% drywall. Needless to say, the brush went right through, leaving a gaping hole. After cooling down and apologizing to my mom, I forgot about the whole thing. That is until later that night. That night, I dreamt that my bed was being rocked by hundreds of little squirrels. As I tried to scramble out of it, I realized I was far off the ground and the whole floor was swarming with rodent upon rodent, skittering and screeching. I awoke with a start, but the skittering and screeching did not stop. I froze. This definitely wasn't a dream, and this definitely wasn't squirrels. With a nauseating shiver of realization, I immediately sprinted downstairs to my parents' room like I was a little kid again. Dad! Dad! There's a bat in the attic! My dad, bleary-eyed yet determined, grabbed a broom and went to confront the bat, somehow managing to shoo it out the window. Phew, problem solved. Or so we thought. Until the next day, when there was another bat, and then another, and then one in the daytime when my sister was casually eating popcorn on the couch while watching TV. She got so freaked out, she locked herself out of the house and had to wait for me to come home from school, not to let her back in. There was no way she was going back in with a bat flapping around, but to use my phone to call animal control. When the animal control guy came hours later, he draws the ingenious conclusion that yes, we do in fact have bats. How many? Probably lots and lots. What can we do about it? Not much. Bats are a protected species in New Jersey because they eat disease-carrying insects like mosquitoes. Apparently, my dad shooing one out with a broom was borderline illegal, but no one could prove the bat was injured, so it was fine. Oh, what else could we do? Bat-proof the house. Animal control guy had a good friend who could do the job. And get rabies shots. Because apparently bat teeth are so tiny and razor sharp, they can bite you without ever realizing. What a fun family bonding event that was. 4 shots with huge needles, 1 in muscle of each arm and 2 right in the butt. I can't say it was pleasant, but I can say I'm immune to rabies, so if you ever need someone to wrestle a particularly nasty raccoon or something, you know who to call. Anyway, you might be wondering, how did the bats find their way in? Oh, just from a strange hole in the drywall caused by none other than, you guessed it, a broken hairbrush angrily chucked through it. Turns out that the scratching sounds I'd been hearing for years were actually from bats that were camped out in the vaulted space between the ceiling and the roof. My moment of rage allowed them a portal into our house where they could roam free and terrorize my family members and I. That meant that I, Allison Dilliard, was the bat liberator, the breaker of bat chains, the mother of bats. So why did I share this goofy yet true anecdote with you? Well, 1, I want to clear the name of bats, who are unfortunately getting most of the blame for the initial spread of COVID-19. Even if the virus was found present in bats, bats are the carriers of a lot of diseases by virtue of their diets and nesting habits. They don't usually interact closely with humans, as they're more afraid of us than we are of them. And with their habitats, as well as those of plenty of wildlife being exponentially ravaged by human interference, it's only a matter of time before a virus mutates and jumps species. All life acts with desperation when squeezed to the extent that we're squeezing the resources of our planet, even viruses. As Jeff Goldblum says in Jurassic Park, life finds a way. If it wasn't evident from this story, I love bats and I hate seeing them get a bad rap. In 2nd grade, we had to do a project on an animal of choice, and I made a picture. I chose the little brown bat and made a picture book about it. I also like bats because we actually had them in the house before when I was a really little kid. I was so smitten with them. They're adorable and furry and small, and the way they fly is so weird that it doesn't seem like they should be able to fly at all. Plus, they take care of pests, they can be expert pollinators, and this is why they are and should be protected. It seems to me like a lot of our most hated, most blamed, and most endangered animals are actually some of the most helpful ones. And maybe one day, when all of this is over, and we've had plenty of time to take a good hard look at ourselves, maybe then our first step can be to start giving back to nature even a mere fraction of what it has given us.